I'd like to talk about creativity tonight instead of what I usually do, which is to take from what I write in the morning and kind of riff on that subject. But it occurs to me I haven't really addressed creativity very much on these videos, and that's kind of strange because I spent my whole life in one art or another. Um, and I've thought a lot about creativity. Um, I do think that um, it's very important to have a discipline, to have a process. Everyone who really produces a lot of work works every day, works consistently, and evolves some kind of procedure that that appeals to them. And it's not necessarily something they have picked up in school or gotten out of a course or a book. They kind of evolve it um, by doing things that attract them. Um, so, in my case, I was in art school at the University of Texas, and I got to a certain point where it was just not for me anymore. I had learned the basic things, and I had gotten to my senior year, and of course, I had to take math because it was a university art department, and I had to take some science and other courses. And I said, I'm actually not getting out of this course of study what I really want to, and I'm kind of losing my steam here. And I think I'm going to just see what I can do by myself. And I went to Mexico for a year and just painted um, just according to what I felt like doing. And I guess I made some progress, but I was kind of I was kind of losing my impetus. Um, Art wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be when I started. I had been drawing from the time I was a child, and I never stopped. I drew all over my homework. My teachers complained about it. Um, but a couple of years later, I found myself in Florence, Italy, and um, took an art course, and it changed everything. It just changed everything. Um, they understood the creative process in a way that none of my American teachers did. They knew that there are some people who have to create kinetically, who it has to come through their body, it has to be expressed physically. And they knew how to jumpstart that process. They had a lot of techniques I had never seen, and suddenly I found that there was a spirit in me, an energy that was powerful. It was it was something that I eventually learned to direct and control, but in the beginning, it was explosive um, because they didn't teach it in terms of technique, in terms of knowledge, in terms of planning and being careful. They taught it in terms of it being a dance, of it being almost a primitive dance to start with. And um, I came out of that school with a degree that my father insisted upon framing and hanging on his wall because he admired degrees so much. But it was such an incidental thing to me. When I was finished with the school and I told them I was leaving, I didn't even think about a degree. They said, "Oh, would you like a diploma?" I said, "Well, yeah, why not?" Um, and so I got back to Texas with that piece of paper, and lo and behold, one day when I visited my father's office, it was framed and on his wall. I still find that funny. Um, in any case, that course, that school, and that procedure gave me back my creativity. Um, and I realized that a lot of the ways creativity is taught kills it. It just kills it dead. And unless you resist, unless you find your way, and I just got lucky, but unless you find your way, it is possible that you'll just give up, and a lot of people do. Now, I remember one time I had been in LA for 6 months taking an acting course, and I came back to Austin where I had a studio, and right off the bat, I painted one of my best paintings. Bang, just like that. I had no idea where it came from. Um, Usually, those really good paintings, and I have a small collection of first year paintings, probably fewer than 10, but they almost never come little by little. They come all at once, bang. And yet, um, recently, I did a painting here, and I haven't painted for almost 10 years. Um, and it was basically something. I had a space on the wall, kind of at the foot of my bed. The landlord had come and taken his painting away. And so there was that empty space, and I put this really bad painting of mine on the wall. Um, it was a painting that my son had said he wanted, and then he moved so often he couldn't keep it. It went into storage. Um, so I brought it to Mexico. It was something that really had no composition to it. The shapes were awkward. The the colors didn't fit each other. I mean, it was just a dissonant creation. And So I lay in bed, and this is a totally different process for me. I've never done this before. I lay in bed, and there it was at the foot of the bed, kind of over to the right. And when I would feel something so strongly that I had to get out of the bed and get a tube of paint, it was the only time I would actually work on it. But it would have to motivate me, it would really have to call me and say, please address this. And I would lie there and have these ideas about it. Um, and a lot of those ideas, I knew I didn't have the colors to deal with it. All I had was green and white, and I didn't want to put any more green in it. And so basically, that painting had to come together with white. And it turned out to be a damn good painting. Nobody was more shocked than me. I suddenly realized it had just come together. And it's kind of a big painting. I used to paint large paintings, and I'd gotten here to Mexico, and there's hardly any space on the walls in this apartment that could accommodate a painting of that size. But I found a space for it. And something happened just out of that experience. I think when I quit painting, it was the result of a trauma um, 10 years ago where um, I expected to spend the rest of my life in France in the house we had worked on for 20 years. And my brother stole my inheritance when my mother died, and I had to sell, and everything went into storage. And we came back to the States, and there was no place to paint. And I went into a period of just not knowing what the hell I was going to do. And um, in the middle of the night, um, this started to happen over and over, where all of these sentences and paragraphs would start flooding through my mind. And unless I got up and wrote down some version of them, I could not sleep. So I would do that. It would take a couple of hours. And that started my writing. Now, I'd always been a journal keeper, but pretty soon I had a book. Um, and then I started writing daily pieces on Medium, and then I branched out to Substack, and then somebody asked me to compile some of my articles into a book, and in the end, I published 6 books. But I haven't been painting. Um, and painting does something for me that writing doesn't do. Writing is natural to me. I love to write. I love to read. I love language. And so it's a natural thing for me to do. And I've been keeping journals and diaries since I was a teenager. But painting is something special. And I think that it has to do with the kinetic way I work. It is very cathartic. It really just um, gives me a huge amount of energy, but also relaxes me at a deep level. even if the painting's not very good. It's just the process. Um, so all of a sudden, I realize I'm going to start painting again. Um, but here's the thing. Um, it's very important, I believe, to have a discipline. Um, and yes, sometimes um, a creative work will just bust out of you and you don't know where it comes from and it's full blown and all you can do is sit there in amazement that you actually did that. But it's not going to happen unless you are consistently creative. And for me, it has to be on a daily basis. I don't skip a day unless I'm pretty sick. And even then, I will find a way to write at the very least. But there's something health giving and healing about a creative discipline. And I think that when you're young, you may imagine that creative people are some kind of geniuses that um, just produce things because they're extremely talented and so on. But actually, the way it works is the more you work, the better you get. Then the more that energy flows through you. There will be days when nothing happens, when it's all bad, you can't see anything, you can't think, you can't do anything, but it counts to keep that discipline, to actually do something. Um, it sounds very interesting that we think of these geniuses who manage to create these things that are unimaginably um, fantastic in their beauty and conception. And um, I think that, yes, there are some pretty eccentric people in the world who have a whole inner world that comes out in strange and fantastic ways in their creative work. But I don't think that you can just wait for inspiration. I think you have to treat it as your job in a way. I know what that sounds like. It sounds like you've reduced it from its magical status down to something mundane, but I do believe that if you're going to be really creative and produce work, you just have to do it regardless of whether you feel it or not. Sometimes you may start and not be feeling it, and then something will catch fire. You never know. It can happen. I think that um, one of the ingredients of creativity is striking a spark somewhere inside yourself to what it is that you need to think about, you need to see, you need to feel, you need to involve yourself in. And if you can somehow strike that spark, and sometimes it's just random, sometimes it just happens and you don't expect it. But when it does happen, bang, you've got that energy all of a sudden, and it knows what to do. That is the beautiful thing about it. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about creativity tonight, and I'm going to sign off now.